In this video, we're going to take a look at using templates. Now that we have vCenter, we're able to create copies of virtual machines that are reset to the appropriate install settings, and also that we can customize the machines as we deploy them. So as we deploy new virtual machines from those templates, we can actually provide all of the installation settings directly inside the interface of VMware. It'll actually create an answer file for us using whatever is appropriate to that environment. I'm going to demo it on Windows, but this also works on Linux and most of the other operating systems that VMware supports. So in this case, W2K8R2-1. I haven't done very much to set it up in any particular way, but maybe I've joined it into the domain. I hope I've at least installed VMware tools in it. Potentially I've set up other security tools and other things that are required in my environment, and I've tuned it just the way I like it, and now I want all of my Windows 2008 machines to be based on that configuration. So typically, this would involve a third-party utility like Ghost, or maybe you're using the Windows Automated Installation Kit to build images. And you've probably sysprepped a particular master golden image from one of your systems, and then you capture that image and so on. Our process here is a little different. We never have to execute sysprep. It's going to do it for us. If we're running Windows Vista or later as our operating system inside the template, sysprep is already included as part of Windows. If you're running an older version of Windows, you're going to need to copy the sysprep files onto your vCenter server in order for vCenter to be able to run them. After the machine is cloned, vCenter will actually run sysprep on the cloned machine, not on the source machine, which means every time we start up the source machine, we don't have to go through that normal process, that post-sysprep configuration. We only have to do that on new machines that we've cloned, and VMware will actually do that for us. Assuming I've got this machine all configured the way that I like, I'm going to go ahead and right-click on it. And you'll see in here we have a template option that we didn't have before when we weren't using vCenter. In this case, you see I have the option to create a copy and then put it in template mode, or I can convert it to template. So I'm just going to say convert to template here. And one of the things you're going to see is it's going to disappear. If you take a look at my inventory view, I'm in the inventory hosts and clusters view. Virtual machines are displayed here. Templates are not displayed here. So if I go back to the inventory though, you'll see I do have a VMs and templates view, which shows me virtual machines and also shows me templates separated from their hosts. Now in this case, I still only have one host, so it's pretty simple. What you can see now is my W2K8R2-1 has been discovered as a template. From there, if I right click on it, you'll notice I have the option to either clone it, which would make another template, convert it to a virtual machine, which would allow me to start this machine up. For example, I might want to install patches into it or add some software or something. Or what we really want, deploy virtual machine from this template. So I'm just going to say I want to do that. Now it asks me the details of my new virtual machine. I guess I'm going to call this one W2K8R2-3, and I'm going to put it in my lab environment 1 data center. And then pick the host in that data center. Click next. And it says, well, what would you like your disks to be? Would you want them to be whatever they were in the template? Our template might be thin provisioned, and we want our production machines to be thick provisioned. So that's at least one case where we'd want to change it. In this case, I believe my template was thin, and I want to keep it as thin, but it doesn't give us a lot of detail about that. So you know what, just to make sure, I'm just going to say I want them thin. Now you'll see that I do have a little bit of a warning here saying that we don't have any VM storage profiles set up. That's okay. This is part of storage discovery to help us try and locate the right type of LUNs, the right type of data stores to put our virtual machines on. So now I've got an NFS data store that we connected to. I showed you in one of the other videos. I'm going to go ahead and select it. We're going to put the newly deployed virtual machine there. Now, if I want, I could go to advanced, and if I have multiple files associated with that, I could put the different virtual disks onto different data stores, or I could change where the VMX file goes. In this case, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and click next. Now, it asks me if I want to power the machine on after creation. Might as well. But it also asks me if I want to customize the guest OS. So it will run sysprep for me. If it just runs sysprep, then when I start it up, it's going to ask me for all the things I would normally be asked as part of a Windows setup. So in this case, I want to actually not wait for it to come up and then fill in all those things whenever it decides to prompt me. I want to set what I want and then walk away. So I'm going to say I want to customize it using the wizard. And then I just provide all the install details that I would normally right here. Lots of times, the virtual machine name and the computer name, I personally find it's easier if they match. So I can say, just use the virtual machine name. Or I can have it prompt me for a name later. Or I can enter a name here, and I can even have it append a numeric value. If you're thinking of this as an interactive process that you're going to do every time you create a virtual machine, some of these settings seem a little silly, like adding a number to the end of it and so on. But if we save these settings as a customization specification, which we can then access again and reuse these settings again, that could be very useful if I use options like use the virtual machine name, that I never have to touch anything here if they all have the same CD key, if they all have the same administrator password, if I'm using dynamic options like this. If I'm using DHCP, for example, maybe I can set that stuff up some other way. Maybe I even have DHCP reservations set up to give them the address that I want without having to provide it for them. So in this case, I'm going to say use the virtual machine name. I'm not going to put in a product key. It's Windows 2008, so it's going to come up in evaluation mode if I don't include a product key, so that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and click next, provide the password that I want to use for admin. And you'll notice you can also say to log in automatically as administrator a couple of times to maybe help with policies or anything that might happen as a result of a script or something after we've logged in those first 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, however many times we pick here. I don't need to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and click next and choose my time zone. If I do specify that it should log in automatically after it's customized, I can add commands here. I don't need to do that. I can specify whether I want typical network settings, such as DHCP, or if I want to use manual settings, I'll just leave it at DHCP. I can have it join the domains, and I can also specify what username and password to use for that. And then probably the most important, this generate new security ID is very important. If the machine we cloned is already part of the domain, and we don't generate a new security ID, we're going to cause difficulties for logging into Active Directory on those machines. So I'm going to save these. I'm going to call this typical Windows 2008 settings. I could have it edit the hardware afterwards, but that just brings up the settings dialog, so nothing really special. Keep my hands off of the keyboard and just wait for it to finish. Okay, while that's running, let's take a look at an example of deploying another virtual machine using those same settings I had done before, and we'll see that now it's a very streamlined deployment process. So I'm just going to right-click on my -1 and deploy yet another virtual machine from that template. Same options I had before. I mean, I do need to provide some details, at least at the VMware layer. I'll put that on my NFS. In this case, I'm going to say customize using an existing customization specification. I'm going to pick my typical Windows 2008 settings, so I don't need to change the computer name because I said just use the virtual machine name. I don't need to change the IP address because I said just use DHCP. All the passwords are the same, time zone's the same, so I could just click next and be done with it. But you'll notice I also have the option that says use the customization wizard to adjust the specification before deployment. So pick those default settings up, and then I can change them only where I need to. Both of those can be very useful. In this case, I'm just going to try and do it as hands-off as possible, and that's it. So that's going to take a little bit of time. I'm going to let that run, and we'll start a new video that shows the first boot process after the cloning has occurred.